Welcome to the CompTIA Project Plus Prepcast by baremetalcyber.com. In every project, scope defines the precise boundaries of what will and will not be delivered. It is more than a list of tasks. It is the agreed vision of the project's deliverables, constraints, and performance expectations. Managing scope effectively is one of the most important aspects of project governance, because uncontrolled changes in scope can undermine schedule predictability, inflate costs, and dilute quality standards. Two terms often come up in this discussion: scope change and scope creep. Both involve modifications to scope, but the way they occur and the way they are managed are very different. A scope change is an intentional, formal modification to the approved scope baseline. It follows the established change control process, including thorough documentation and a detailed impact analysis. Once approved, it is integrated into updated project plans and schedules, making it traceable and auditable. Scope change is a sign of a disciplined project adapting to new information, evolving needs, or changing priorities without sacrificing control. Scope creep, by contrast, is the silent disruptor. It refers to unapproved or uncontrolled additions to the project scope that bypass the formal review process. Scope creep often begins subtly: an extra feature added during development, an informal agreement to expand a deliverable, or a small adjustment made without documenting its impact. Over time, these untracked changes accumulate, stretching resources thin, creating delays and jeopardizing quality. Scope creep often stems from unclear requirements, stakeholder pressure, or a breakdown in communication and documentation practices. The consequences of scope creep can be serious. Deadlines slip as work expands beyond original estimates. Budgets are exceeded as labor, materials, and oversight requirements grow without planned funding. Quality suffers when teams are forced to rush work or split attention between competing priorities. Stakeholder satisfaction may erode, especially if the additional work delays delivery of the original commitments. Detecting early signs of scope creep is essential. Watch for team members beginning work on features that were never approved, or requirements expanding without corresponding adjustments to time or budget. Informal promises made to stakeholders without review or deliverables that gradually shift from their agreed definitions are also red flags. Catching these signs early allows for corrective action before the project baseline is undermined. Managing scope creep proactively starts with reinforcing the importance of scope boundaries to both the project team and stakeholders. Regular reviews of work in progress against the original plan help ensure alignment. Team members should be trained to channel all new requests through the formal change process, rather than informally incorporating them into ongoing work. Above all, adherence to the scope baseline must be non-negotiable if a project is to remain under control. This discipline is supported by a solid scope management plan. The plan defines how scope will be documented, monitored, and controlled. It assigns roles and responsibilities for managing change requests, sets expectations for stakeholder participation in scope reviews, and provides a clear process for evaluating and approving modifications. The scope management plan becomes the team's reference point for identifying and responding to scope deviations. Communication plays a vital role in keeping scope under control. The scope statement must clearly outline what is included and excluded in the project, and these boundaries should be reiterated during kickoff meetings, stakeholder updates, and team briefings. Documenting and distributing all scope-related decisions prevents misunderstandings later in the project. When stakeholders make informal requests, it is important to acknowledge and document them without making commitments. The request should then be routed into the formal change process, where it will be evaluated for impact, value, and alignment with project objectives. This not only preserves control, but also reinforces the principle that every change must be reviewed before it is accepted. The project manager is at the center of scope governance. They are responsible for enforcing scope boundaries, facilitating change reviews, and communicating decisions to all relevant parties. Remaining objective is critical, as is resisting pressure to bypass established processes in the interest of speed or convenience. The project manager's leadership helps keep the team focused, the baseline protected, and the project's integrity intact. Documentation is the backbone of effective scope control. A clearly written scope statement removes ambiguity, while change logs record every approved modification and its justification. Meeting minutes provide confirmation of decisions made during discussions, and visual artifacts like work breakdown structure diagrams help the team visualize and understand the scope. A well-defined scope baseline serves as the ultimate reference point. It specifies deliverables, boundaries, and performance measures in a way that makes it easy to detect unauthorized changes. With the baseline in place, the team can quickly determine whether a request is valid or whether it represents scope creep. Without one, scope control becomes reactive, inconsistent, and vulnerable to external pressures. When approved scope changes occur, they must be immediately integrated into the project schedule. New tasks, adjusted durations, and altered dependencies should be mapped out, and potential delays assessed using critical path analysis. The revised schedule must be shared promptly with all stakeholders so that expectations are aligned. Adjustments to scope inevitably affect cost. Budgets must be updated to account for the resources, materials, and tools required for new work. This may trigger the need for additional financial approvals before the change can proceed. Reforecasting after scope changes improves accuracy in tracking costs for the remainder of the project. The work breakdown structure should be updated to reflect any newly approved scope changes. This update cascades through all levels of the structure, ensuring that tasks are clearly defined, assigned, and tracked for progress. By updating the WBS promptly, the project manager ensures planning, resourcing, and reporting remain accurate. Communicating scope adjustments to the team is just as important as documenting them. Every affected member should understand what has changed, why it has changed, and how their work will be impacted. Formal communication through updated assignments, task lists, or schedules reduces ambiguity and supports smooth integration. Securing stakeholder buy-in for scope changes ensures that all parties remain committed to the updated plan. By explaining why the change was made, outlining its expected benefits, and inviting feedback, the project manager can maintain trust and reduce resistance to future adjustments. Finally, lessons learned from past scope changes and scope creep incidents should be incorporated into retrospectives and shared across the organization. Identifying patterns, such as weak requirements gathering or insufficient change control, can lead to process improvements and training that prevent recurrence. Scope and quality are tightly connected. Expanding scope without adjusting quality standards or resource availability risks stretching the team too thin, leading to compromised deliverables. Any scope change must be reviewed for its impact on testing and quality assurance, ensuring that objectives remain realistic and achievable with the resources available. An essential safeguard in controlling both scope change and scope creep is the use of consistent, well-maintained documentation. Scope statements must be explicit, leaving no room for misinterpretation about what is included or excluded. Every approved change should be recorded in the change log, along with its justification and impact assessment. Meeting minutes from scope discussions help confirm decisions and provide a record for future reference, while visual tools like updated work breakdown structure diagrams keep the team aligned on deliverables and task ownership. The scope baseline is the anchor for all scope governance. It defines the approved deliverables, project boundaries, and performance metrics that have been agreed upon by stakeholders. This baseline is more than a static document. It is the reference point for detecting and addressing unauthorized changes. When a new request is submitted, the project manager compares it against the baseline to quickly determine whether it is a legitimate adjustment or a case of scope creep. Without this baseline, scope control becomes reactive, inconsistent, and vulnerable to stakeholder pressure. When scope changes are formally approved, integrating them into the project schedule must happen immediately. Updated schedules should account for new tasks, revised durations, and shifting dependencies. Any delay in reflecting these changes in the schedule can create misalignment between planning and execution. Project managers should also use critical path analysis to evaluate how the change will affect overall timelines and identify any potential bottlenecks. Every scope change carries cost implications, and those must be evaluated and addressed. Budgets should be revised to include the additional labor, materials, and tooling needed to deliver the updated scope. Financial governance may require additional approvals before the new work begins, especially if funding sources must be adjusted. Reforecasting after scope changes provides a more accurate financial picture for the remainder of the project, helping to prevent future overruns. The work breakdown structure must also be revised to reflect newly approved work packages. This is not a surface-level update. It should cascade through all relevant levels of the WBS to ensure each task has a clear owner, a realistic duration, and well-defined deliverables. Making these updates promptly allows the project team to plan resources and track progress accurately. Communicating scope adjustments to the team is equally critical. Each affected team member should receive clear, formal instructions outlining the new or revised expectations. Updated task assignments, timelines, and deliverables should be distributed in writing to remove any ambiguity. When the entire team understands the updated plan, they can integrate new work without disrupting ongoing tasks or compromising quality. Securing stakeholder buy-in for scope changes helps maintain trust and commitment to the updated plan. Stakeholders should be briefed on the reasoning behind the change, its anticipated benefits, and its potential impacts on schedule, budget, or quality. Their feedback can validate whether the change meets evolving business needs and provide insights that help fine-tune execution. Lessons learned from managing scope should be documented during retrospectives or post-implementation reviews. Identifying where scope creep occurred can reveal weaknesses in planning, requirement gathering, or change control enforcement. These insights should lead to updates in processes, training, or communication strategies. Sharing these lessons across the organization helps build institutional knowledge and prevent recurring issues. The relationship between scope and quality cannot be overlooked. Expanding scope without adjusting resources or timelines can put quality standards at risk. Each scope change should be reviewed to ensure that adequate testing and validation will be possible and that deliverable integrity will be maintained. Quality and scope must remain in balance if the project is to achieve its objectives. In summary, scope change is a controlled, documented, and approved adjustment to the project baseline, while scope creep is an unapproved expansion that erodes control. Preventing scope creep requires vigilance, proactive communication, and strict adherence to scope governance processes. When scope changes are managed correctly, they can enhance project outcomes by responding to evolving needs without compromising schedule, cost, or quality. Recognizing and addressing scope deviations early protects the project's success and strengthens stakeholder confidence. Thank you for listening. Please follow baremetalcyber.com on social media and check out our books at cyberauthor.me.